Got another resource for you this morning, the Timechart of Biblical History. Now, even if you don't believe in the Bible as a religious work, it is definitely one of the great books of the Western world. It is definitely probably the most important book. And it's interesting because I remember when I first got the great book set, and I was like, what? The Bible's not in here? It's probably the most impactful book. Probably had the most impact on the Western world of any other book ever written. Well, I went into the first set. I can't remember where I read it, if it's at the beginning of this Syntopicon or where it is. But Adler says specifically, we didn't include a Bible in this set because most people have one in their home. They were printed the first time at the end of the 40s or the very beginning of the 50s. And maybe fewer homes have a Bible in them now, but at that point, basically everybody owned a Bible. So they didn't see any reason to make people pay for them to reprint another Bible. And another cool thing that they did was, I think that they linked some of the stuff in the great books to Bible references, so you could still use it as part of your study when you go through the Syntopicon, and it categorizes everything for you in the great book set. So, excuse me, if you're going to get a great education, if you're going to be self-educating all your life and be a lifelong learner, the Bible's going to be part of your study because it's had so much impact. It's full of wisdom. It's full of really great stuff. Even if you don't believe that all the stories are literally true, definitely it's important to know. And it's fun to read. There's really great stories in it. So you're going to want a biblical timeline because it doesn't have one for you there, and it skips around like crazy. And I'm visual. I really, really like. That's why we have several timelines listed, because I own several. I just think they're really, really important to have. I'll make up my own if I don't have one, and I'll go online and find timelines and print them off and put them in notebooks for myself, which I can show you another time how to use a commonplace book to study a subject. But anyway, this timeline is super cool, so I'll show you how it's put together. It's really tall and big. I can't even fit it all in the screen, kind of, there we go. And so you need a tall bookshelf where you got to put it in like that. And it's hardback, and every square inch of it is used effectively somehow. And this thing folds out and out and out and out and out and out, as you can see. It just goes on and on and on. Now, the way it's put together, I'll show you, is like this. Up there on the top, you'll see all these different colors, okay? Those are the different individuals and civilizations as they begin to be. Now, it's from the Bible, so it's going to start right here in the beginning. It's got Adam. And then it's got Cain and Abel branch off here, and Seth branches off here, and Enos, etc., etc. So, it gives you all of these Bible people that are listed in the Bible, and it branches off whose child is who, which is really great. And then down here you've got these, down here on the bottom you've got these pictures and some stuff like that. But then it expands, okay? So as soon as we have the flood, and then it breaks off into different civilizations, then down here we've got the Tower of Babel. And all these civilizations branch off, and down here is the Asian civilization that takes off and heads off on their own, and they don't even interact with the other civilizations at all for a really, really long time. So then when you get past the Tower of Babel, you've got the entire page is taken up. They've got little pictures and visuals, and it's really cool because, like, for example, look right here. See how this red line goes along? And this is what's happening here. Is that right here you've got the Egyptians, you've got the Israelites that come down into Egypt, and their line coincides, and then over here they're released and they come back up into there and become their own people again and become free again. So it shows where the civilizations interact, where a leader went someplace. It's got little tiny fonts because it's just got packed full of information. And then here at the top, it'll have a name, and it'll have a little summary of their life. It'll have little drawings and little pictures. And then up here at the very top, It has the books of Scripture when they took place. This is when Exodus happened. This is when Judges happened. This is when Samuel happened. And you've got the, down at the very bottom, you've got the years. So you've got 1800 BC, 1700 BC, 1600 BC. Now, regardless of where you're at with your worldview and your belief system, regardless of whether you think the Bible is really history or whatever it is, once you get to, the time when we've got some good history on Egypt, 2500 BC, it's really accurate history. There's variation among scholars even today. There's not complete unity on dates for lots of things. There's not complete unity on dates for things in Egypt or the time of Moses or any of that kind of thing. You really kind of have to approach, in the Western world especially, there start to be better and better timelines and dates for Egypt because it's really kind of the oldest civilization we have the most stuff on. Those dates become more and more solid as you approach. Once you get to 2000 and 1800, 1500, they're pretty good. But then again, there again, like if you go study the New Testament and you look, you look at it scholarly and you read some of the different approaches to it and how it was put together, there's 300 or 400 years where the books just kind of floated around before they were codified and put into one book. And so there's disagreement there about when one particular prophet actually lived and when each of those books was actually written. So we don't know for sure. So this is a loose interpretation. But it's pretty accurate. And when it comes to things happening simultaneously across civilizations, it's also really pretty accurate there too. And it's fun to look at all the little visuals. When I first really was introduced to the whole idea, and it was funny because it was after 3 years at a private university, I was finally introduced to classics and liberal education, and I got really excited. One of the things that my experience has been, it was my experience personally, and then I started teaching and mentoring other people, and I've noticed over and over again that this seems to be the experience of lots of people, and that is that once you really get excited about learning and you're introduced to the classics, you realize that you don't have a good handle on history. Almost everybody experiences that, and you realize, oh, I'm not even sure who all the people were and when they lived. And that's when these are really, really useful. I still use them, and I definitely use them with my kids, and I refer my kids to them. But I'm not quite as dependent on them as I used to be. When I dove in, so I went back and just began at Western civilization, started with Homer, and where we traditionally start, into Greece and all that, and just tried to get in my mind, oh, this is kind of when the 7 sages were, and this is who Solon was, and this is what happened to establish Sparta, and then this is what was going on. This is kind of when Plato and Aristotle lived, and this is how it transitioned into the Romans. And I was in timelines all the time. I was looking at them all the time. And this was a major one that I referenced because it does a very good job of that time period. It goes up to the time of Christ. And so that's going to take you up to Nero, and some of the then there starts to be some what's the word when they were hurting the Christians. Then another really fun thing that you'll find at the end, after the timeline finishes, you'll see that Christ is there at the end of the timeline, and you've got Nero and the Romans down at the bottom. Then you start to have some maps, and the maps are also super helpful because the Middle East around the area of Jerusalem has always been populated, as far as we know. There's Saudi Arabia and the Exodus, and it's just super helpful to look at the maps. And then you get the ancient Israelite and Roman and Greek maps. I guess it doesn't have the Roman and Greek maps, it just has the Israelite maps. But then you get all that without having to go to another source. So you've got your timeline and your maps to understand when certain books in the Bible happened and how they were corresponding to real things in history and where the civilizations were living and what was going on. This one does show the whole ancient world because it's got Paul's journeys down there at the bottom, if you can see that one. And it's got when they were taken captive. It's got a map of ancient Jerusalem, where the temple was and stuff like that. It's got the division of all the tribes. It shows you where each of the tribes were given their land. And so it's just so, so valuable. It's got the 10 Commandments on the back. And then it's got a map of how they think, it's got a diagram of how they think that the ark looked. It's got Moses and the Exodus. It's got listed, this is on the back, the timeline's on one whole side. This is what's on the back side of it. Lists of the books, of the feasts and holy days, the gods and idols, the family tree of the ancestors, the chronology of the prophets. It's just packed full of really, wars and battles, the chronology of the Old Testament. So it's got just all written out really succinctly. 3875, 2349 in the major events from the Old Testament. And then it's got some New Testament stuff for you. Christ's life, the crucifixion, and the appearances. And then it's got what happened to the apostles. So you can use it for Old and New Testament for virtually anything you would want supplementary to help you understand it and fit it in to other civilizations, understand how it all happened chronologically, looking at the maps. It's just so helpful. It's published by Chartwell Books Incorporated, and it's called the Timechart of Biblical History, over 4,000 years in charts, maps, lists, and chronologies. And I just cannot recommend it highly enough. It is something everybody's going to want in their library, because when you educate yourself, you're going to read the Bible. I think people who believe in the Bible should read it every day, but otherwise, it's just a very important book to study, and this is, in my opinion, one of the greatest study helps for the time you're going to spend in the Bible. So, the Timechart of Biblical History, Chartwell, get it and use it, because you will be amazed how much better you understand the Bible. See you next time.